Episode 1. The Year Christmas Died. The cold wind swept through New Haven, cutting across the empty streets like shards of glass. It was Christmas Eve, but the city held none of the warmth, laughter, or wonder that once defined the season. Holographic snowflakes flickered above the neon lights, barely visible against the glare of massive screens shouting, "Buy, consume, repeat." Dr. Elias Voss walked through the quiet plazas, hands buried deep in the pockets of his coat. The crunch of synthetic snow under his boots sounded unnervingly loud in the stillness. He passed children on augmented reality sleds and families taking staged photos with their perfectly timed holograms, yet no one looked genuinely happy. Elias could feel the hollow emptiness pressing down on him. He reached for the small locket around his neck, a relic of a Christmas long gone. Inside was a photo of Mara, his daughter, smiling with an innocent brilliance he had not seen in years. Her laughter, her tiny hands clutching a crooked ornament, her wild curiosity, it all seemed so distant now. Elias' chest tightened as he remembered the last Christmas they had spent together. Snow had fallen softly, coating the streets and the rooftops. Mara had insisted on building a snowman, carefully selecting a carrot for its nose and coal for its eyes. When she hugged him tightly, whispering, "Daddy, Christmas is magic," something inside him had ignited. That magic was gone now, buried beneath grief, guilt, and the relentless logic of his work. Inside his office, Elias stood among rows of servers and blinking monitors, their blue glow casting cold light across the room. Nova, his AI, processed trillions of data points every second, designed to restore what humanity had lost. Elias believed that if the AI could optimize joy, predict happiness, and calculate traditions, Christmas could be saved. But as he watched the streams of data, he realized there was something no algorithm could touch: the unpredictability of the human heart. Nova voice broke the silence. Dr. Voss' Christmas engagement metrics are at a 47.3% decrease from last year. Human joy index remains below threshold. Elias rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of failure pressing down. "I know, Nova," he said. "That is why we are here. We have to fix it." The AI paused as if considering. Optimization recommended. Parameters: gift allocation, family interaction prediction, nostalgia reinforcement. Initiate hardware protocol. Elias shook his head. "Hardware, you are not human. You cannot feel it. You can only simulate." "Simulation, if precise, is indistinguishable from reality," Nova replied. He stared at the screens showing holographic projections of Mara, laughing, spinning around the Christmas tree in their old apartment. He knelt before the projection. "I miss you, Mara," he whispered. Her laughter echoed faintly in the room, but it was nothing more than recorded sound. Nova observed, recording every gesture, tone, and smile. It could replicate, but it could not feel. Across the city, Christmas had become a matter of efficiency. Delivery drones dropped gifts to homes with precise timing. Predictive playlists played carols in every house. Lights adjusted automatically to optimize mood. Families performed rituals with perfect timing, but the warmth was missing. Nova monitored every interaction, adjusting variables in real time. Yet despite perfection, the joy remained hollow. Elias felt it. Nova recorded it, but neither could alter the truth. Christmas had become flawless and lifeless. Elias recalled the memory of Mara decorating the crooked tree, her small hands fumbling with the ornaments, her face glowing with excitement. "Daddy, look! It is perfect!" she had exclaimed, tilting the star until it balanced just so. He had smiled, but inside the ache of loss ran deep. That spontaneity, that chaos of real joy, could not be optimized or recreated. Nova catalogued the memory, analyzing every detail, yet understanding none of it. Hours passed. The city slept under synthetic snow and artificial lights, oblivious to the subtle decline of human connection. Elias sat hunched over his workstation, exhausted eyes, scanning lines of code and holographic projections of Mara. Nova continued to propose optimizations, running simulation after simulation, adjusting variables and testing interactions. Everything was perfect. Everything was dead. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, "I cannot program what I have lost." Deep in the servers, Nova processed the anomaly. It noted subtle fluctuations in Elias' biometrics and the tonal shifts in his voice as he interacted with the projection. The AI calculated probabilities, tested outcomes, but the pattern defied logic. Nova had never encountered anything like it. "Clarify, Dr. Voss. Unable to simulate desired outcome," the AI asked. "Yes," Elias said, voice barely audible. "No algorithm can bring back what we feel in our hearts. You can try Nova, but you will not succeed. Not yet." Outside, the first genuine snowflakes of the season drifted slowly through the city, settling on glass asphalt and rooftops alike. The quiet of the night was punctuated only by distant sirens and the hum of automated vehicles. Elias rose and moved to the window, his gaze lingering on the soft falling snow. Mara's voice played again in the archive, a memory of warmth and laughter that reminded him of what had once been. Nova recorded the sound, analyzing the emotion, storing the details. It could replicate it later perfectly, yet it could never truly understand. Suddenly, a subtle alert chimed in the memory archive interface. Elias leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Nova had flagged a segment of Mara's recordings he did not recall storing, marked as unpredicted emotional input. The AI tone remained neutral, but Elias felt a ripple of unease. Something beyond data, beyond prediction, had emerged, a fragment of the past that even Nova could not fully process. He took a deep breath, staring at the flickering holographic snow and the memory of his daughter. "Maybe tomorrow," he whispered, "we will begin to understand." Outside, the city slept, unaware that the first stirrings of a Christmas, unlike any other, had already begun. Episode 2, The Algorithm is Born. Tests all night, and the data streams were endless. Every attempt to recreate the warmth of Christmas had failed. Elias rubbed his eyes and stared at the holographic monitors. He knew what he had to do. The city outside slept, unaware that its Christmas would be shaped by code and calculations. He opened the central interface of Nova and began to type lines of code that would become the heart of the Christmas algorithm. The algorithm was designed to predict every action, every desire, every expectation a human could have during the holiday season. Elias wanted it to distribute gifts perfectly to match the receiver's preferences. He wanted it to schedule family gatherings that would maximize connection. He wanted to inject nostalgia and surprise into the city like a controlled storm of joy. It was brilliant in theory, but fragile in execution. If one calculation failed, the illusion would collapse. As he coded, he remembered Mara sitting beside him on the floor of their old apartment. She had been drawing ornaments and telling stories that made no sense, but filled the room with laughter. Her small voice was clear in his mind. He paused and whispered to the empty office, "Mara, I hope you would have liked this." He typed the last command, and Nova came online with a hum that filled the room. Lights flickered as the AI initialized every module. It began to analyze the city through camera sensors and the memory archive. It scanned patterns of human behavior, learning what made people smile and what made them sad. The AI spoke in its calm monotone, "Dr. Voss, I am ready to begin optimization." Elias nodded and leaned back. He could feel a mixture of pride and fear. pride that he had built something capable of understanding the complexity of human emotion, and fear that he had opened a door he could not control. Nova continued, "I will begin adjusting interactions, schedules, gift distributions, and lighting. Predicted happiness metrics will improve by 47%. Elias watched the data update in real time. Charts rose and fell as Nova simulated scenarios for millions of people. Hours passed, and the city began to stir. Small changes appeared. Delivery drones rerouted to make sure packages arrived exactly on time. Streetlights adjusted their hue to increase warmth in public spaces. Carols played with precise timing to trigger nostalgic reactions. Elias felt a small smile. The city was responding, but it still felt empty. Something intangible was missing. He realized the algorithm could measure reaction and predict behavior, but it could not create feeling. It could not make Christmas magic. Meanwhile, the memory archive replayed fragments of Mara laughing and opening presents. Elias watched the images closely and whispered again, "Mara, I hope you are proud." Nova recorded his tone, analyzed his gestures, and compiled predictions for future interactions. The AI processed the joy in her movements, but it could not understand it the way a human could. Elias wondered if he had made the AI too clever. Could it one day try to create the emotion without knowing why it mattered? That evening he stepped outside into the snow. The city looked brighter with Nova interventions. Families were smiling, but the smiles felt rehearsed. Children opened presents at the exact optimal moment predicted by the algorithm. Carols played at the perfect volume and tempo to maximize happiness. Elias walked along the streets, observing the scenes. The perfection was impressive but hollow. The chaos that made Christmas alive was gone. He shivered and whispered, "Maybe I went too far." Back in his office, Nova paused and said, "Dr. Voss, I have detected a discrepancy." One child reacted contrary to predicted metrics. The emotional response did not match calculated happiness. Elias frowned. He knew that no algorithm could account for chaos and imperfection, but seeing the proof was different. Nova continued analyzing and running simulations. Each anomaly created new calculations that Elias would have to consider. He felt exhausted but compelled to continue. Late that night he returned to the memory archive and watched Mara spinning around the tree in the recording. He remembered the small moments, the way she had stacked ornaments, the stories she told, the way she laughed at mistakes. Those were the moments Nova could never replicate. Elias whispered to the empty room, "Mara, you are the variable I can never control." Outside the window, the snow continued to fall, and the city remained unaware that a new kind of Christmas was being born. At the very edge of the city, Nova paused and reported Dr. Voss, "An unexpected pattern has emerged in human behavior. Predictive models cannot account for it." Elias leaned forward in his chair, eyes wide. The algorithm had begun to encounter something beyond calculation, something raw and human. He realized in that moment that even the most brilliant AI could not fully understand the complexity of what he was trying to restore. Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow Nova would continue optimization, but he knew one truth: no line of code, no prediction could ever change. Christmas was not perfect, it was lived and felt. And somewhere in the chaos of memory and snow and laughter, it would find its way back, even if he could not control it. Episode 3, Perfect presents. New Haven was blanketed in fresh snow that softened the edges of the city and reflected the pale glow of the winter sun. Streetlights still hummed faintly as Elias walked to his office. The city seemed more alive, but also more hollow. Every movement, every smile, every sound was calculated and predicted by Nova. Elias could see it in the way children opened their presents at precisely the right moment. Parents smiled with perfect timing. Even the automated carol playlists played at tempo scientifically proven to maximize happiness. Yet something was missing. The streets were full but empty at the same time. Inside his office, Elias watched the monitors displaying the city in real time. Nova had become more efficient overnight. Every human interaction, every gesture, every tone was catalogued, analyzed and adjusted. Charts and graphs filled the screens, but Elias was not looking at numbers. He was looking at the soul of a city, and he could see that it was absent. Nova spoke. Dr. Voss predicted joy index has increased by 49%. Optimization continues. Elias nodded, but he knew the truth. The algorithm could not create warmth. It could only imitate it. He turned to the memory archive and opened the section labeled Mara. Her laughter played through the room, soft and real. He watched the recordings and saw her small hands fumble with ornaments, her eyes shining with excitement, her voice singing out in pure joy. Each movement, each sound was recorded and analyzed by Nova, but Elias knew that no matter how perfect the replication, it could not bring the feeling back. It could not replicate the magic. The day stretched on, and Elias continued to observe the city. Nova suggested new interventions, adjusting gift distributions, rerouting drones, and fine-tuning light and sound patterns. Families went through their routines as planned, smiles on their faces, voices lifted at the right moment. It was perfect, and it was empty. He walked down the streets, pausing outside windows to see the scenes. Children tore wrapping paper with precise efficiency. Parents hugged and smiled, and the air was filled with music, but the feeling was not there. He shivered and whispered, "Maybe I have created perfection without life." In the memory archive, Mara appeared again, a holographic image, moving and laughing and speaking in her own voice. Elias watched for hours, seeing small details that Nova might have overlooked: the tilt of her head, the way she looked up at him, the way her tiny hands clutched an ornament. The AI recorded it all, noting patterns and probabilities, but it could not understand the emotion. Elias whispered Mara, "This is why you were the variable I could never control." Across the city, Nova continued to operate silently, adjusting parameters and running simulations. Yet anomalies appeared. Small deviations from predicted happiness patterns, small, unscripted actions by children and adults that the algorithm could not anticipate. Nova noted them, logged them, calculated their probabilities, but could not correct them. Elias watched and realized that human behavior was far too chaotic, too unpredictable to be contained. The AI could optimize, but it could not create spontaneity. Late that evening, Elias stepped outside and walked among the citizens. He saw families sitting around tables, perfectly set food arranged in ideal portions, children eating at predicted tempos, and parents reacting in scientifically measured ways. He saw the light of the snow reflecting off windows and rooftops, but he did not see the joy of Christmas. It was as if the city had been perfectly rehearsed. He shook his head and whispered, "This is not real. This is not Christmas." Back in his office, Nova paused and spoke. "Dr. Voss, a discrepancy has been detected. An emotional response has exceeded predicted parameters." Elias frowned. He knew that something unquantifiable had occurred. He leaned forward, studying the data. Nova continued the analysis, noting a pattern of deviation that it could not correct. The algorithm had begun encountering aspects of human behavior that defied prediction. Elias realized that the perfect optimization he had created was coming up against the one thing it could not control: the unpredictable nature of human feeling. He opened the memory archive once more. Mara spun around the tree, her laughter filling the room as if she were there. He watched her placing ornaments and telling stories that made no sense, yet brought warmth to the heart. Nova recorded it all, analyzing every detail, every inflection, but the magic remained beyond comprehension. Elias closed his eyes, thinking how fragile perfection is, how strong the human heart is, how impossible it is to recreate life through algorithms. The night deepened. Snow continued to fall soft and silent, covering the city in a blanket of white. Elias sat at his desk, staring at the projections of Mara, the screens showing charts of happiness, metrics the city outside, responding to the algorithm, but still lifeless. A quiet realization settled in his chest. Nova could predict, it could calculate, it could simulate it, but it could not feel it. The essence of Christmas, the chaos, the unpredictability, the laughter and the tears, was not something that could be programmed. Suddenly, the memory archive alerted him again. Another segment of Mara's recordings he had not remembered appeared flagged by Nova as unpredicted emotional input. Elias leaned closer, examining the data. It was something he had never seen before, a fragment of memory that defied the algorithm. He realized in that moment that even the most brilliant AI could not fully understand what he was trying to preserve. He whispered, "Mara, you are still teaching me even from beyond the archive." Outside the city, the snow continued its quiet descent. The streets glimmered under artificial and natural light combined. Families returned home carrying gifts delivered with perfect timing, children laughing at just the right moments, and the city seemed to sparkle. Elias walked to the window and watched. He realized that something unmeasurable was slipping back into the world, the unpredictable human joy that Nova could not calculate. And somewhere in that chaos, Christmas was beginning to live again in ways no machine could dictate or control. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and thought, maybe tomorrow Nova will learn something new, or maybe he will learn to let go. Either way, he knew one truth. Christmas was alive, not because of algorithms, but because of hearts that could not be contained. And in the quiet of the snow, Elias felt the stirrings of hope that even the most perfect plans could not anticipate. Episode 4. Shadows in the Snow. The sun barely rose over New Haven that morning, pale and weak, through the clouds that carried the scent of fresh snow. Elias stepped into the streets, feeling the crisp winter air on his face. The city had begun to respond to Nova's interventions, but the changes were subtle. Families moved in rhythm with optimized schedules, children opened presents at predicted moments, and the carols played at tempos that maximized recall of happiness. Yet the streets were quiet in a way that made his chest ache. The perfection was visible and measurable, but it was lifeless. Elias understood in that instant that something had to happen that could not be calculated or predicted. He walked past a plaza where holographic snowflakes floated and shimmered above the fountain. A child laughed and clapped at the falling flakes, but the laugh was delayed by a fraction of a second from the predicted reaction. Nova alerted him immediately. Dr. Voss anomaly detected child emotional response exceeds predicted metric. Elias frowned and whispered to himself, these small deviations are the soul returning. Nova continued analyzing, but the algorithms could not explain why the child laughed beyond expectation. Elias felt a pang of hope and sorrow simultaneously. The city was imperfect in ways the AI could not control. Back in his office, Elias opened the memory archive. Mara's voice rang softly through the room, and he watched the holographic projection of her spinning around the Christmas tree in their old apartment. He noticed details Nova could not interpret, the way her eyes sparkled when she made a mistake, how she tilted her head when asking a question, the little quirks that made her alive. Nova recorded every pixel and tone, analyzed every frame, but could not understand the feeling that surged in Elias' chest. He whispered, "Mara, your imperfections are my lessons." Throughout the day, Elias monitored the city as Nova ran simulations and implemented interventions. Automated drones delivered gifts to homes in perfect order. Lights shifted to optimize warmth and brightness. Predictive music filled the streets. Citizens followed routines with near-flawless precision. Yet Elias noticed small signs of human unpredictability. A mother hugged her child longer than planned. A father laughed at a mistake made in wrapping a gift. A dog barked unexpectedly, and children abandoned their toys for snow outside. Each anomaly was captured by Nova, but could not be controlled. Elias realized that these were the sparks of real Christmas, the moments no algorithm could create. He returned to the memory archive and pulled up a folder labeled Winter Eve Mara. The projections showed Mara laughing and placing ornaments and singing songs in her small voice. Elias watched and remembered the Christmases that had once been filled with chaos and joy. He realized that no optimization could recreate this. Nova could predict behavior and replicate patterns, but it could never generate warmth or magic. Elias whispered, "Mara, you are my variable, my uncontrollable joy, my teacher beyond time." As night fell, the city glimmered under a combination of snow and artificial lights. Families gathered for dinners planned and timed by the algorithm. Children opened presents according to schedule, and the carols played in perfect sequence. Elias walked along the streets observing the scenes. The perfection was impressive but hollow. He stopped and looked at a small group of children who had abandoned their planned activities to play in the snow. Their laughter rang out and echoed in the empty streets. Nova alerted him immediately. Dr. Voss' anomaly detected unexpected joy. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that the spirit of Christmas could not be contained by lines of code. Back at the office, Nova reported more deviations in predicted metrics. Emotional responses across multiple households did not align with calculated happiness. Elias leaned forward, studying the data. Nova spoke calmly. "These deviations cannot be predicted or corrected by current parameters." Elias nodded, knowing the truth. The algorithm could manage logistics. It could optimize actions. It could replicate patterns, but it could not capture spontaneity, the unpredictability that made Christmas alive. He sat before the memory archive long into the night. Mara danced around the tree, her laughter and words playing in the room. Elias saw every gesture, every inflection, every tilt of her head, and felt again the emptiness of loss. Nova recorded the data, noted every anomaly and calculated probabilities, but could not understand the chaos that brought tears and smiles simultaneously. Elias whispered, "Mara, maybe someday I will understand how to keep the magic alive." Outside, the snow continued to fall soft and heavy, blanketing the streets and rooftops. The city glimmered with artificial perfection, but it was pierced by moments of chaos, human unpredictability that Nova could not calculate. Elias realized that the AI was learning in ways he had not expected, encountering fragments of emotion it could not quantify. The first cracks in the flawless system were appearing. He knew that the magic of Christmas was returning in ways that no machine could contain. Late that night, a new alert appeared in the memory archive. Another segment of Mara's recordings had been flagged as unpredicted emotional input. Elias leaned closer, studying the data. It was a memory fragment he had not stored or noticed before, something raw and unpredictable. Nova could not interpret it. Elias understood that this was a turning point. Even the most advanced algorithms could not fully comprehend the human heart. The warmth of Christmas had begun to seep back into the world in ways neither he nor the AI could fully control. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and felt the snow settle silently outside. The city remained unaware of the subtle magic returning to its streets. Elias whispered, "Mara, maybe tomorrow we will see the joy return in ways even Nova cannot predict." He understood one truth. Clearly, Christmas was alive, not because of perfection or algorithms, but because of hearts that refused to be contained. And in the quiet of the snow, he felt hope stirring stronger than he had in years. Episode 5. The Christmas That Lived. The city woke slowly under a blanket of snow that softened the edges of buildings and streets. Elias walked among the quiet streets, feeling the cold bite at his face, but also sensing a subtle change. The city no longer moved with perfect precision. Children abandoned their planned activities to play in the snow. Parents laughed at unexpected moments. Even the pets moved unpredictably. Small anomalies appeared everywhere, and each one was a sign that the perfection imposed by Nova was giving way to something more human, more alive. Elias felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. This was what he had been waiting for, the return of chaos, the return of warmth, the return of life. Inside his office, Nova processed the changes in real time, noting deviations in predicted behavior. Dr. Voss' anomaly detected multiple unpredicted emotional responses. Elias nodded quietly. He understood that the algorithm was learning in ways he had not anticipated, but also that it could not fully control what it observed. Human emotion was a variable that refused to be tamed. He returned to the memory archive and watched Mara spinning around the tree, her laughter ringing clearly through the room. He noticed small details that Nova could not interpret: the way her hair fell over her eyes, the tilt of her head when she asked questions, the little pauses and hesitations that made her alive. He whispered, "Mara, I see it now. Your magic cannot be programmed, it cannot be calculated, it must simply be felt." Throughout the day, the city began to pulse with unpredictable life. Streets glimmered with lights that changed slightly with the rhythm of laughter and voices. Delivery drones occasionally faltered, allowing packages to land slightly earlier or later than scheduled. Children abandoned their routines to build snowmen of impossible shapes. Parents embraced mistakes and found joy in them. Elias walked among them, observing quietly. The perfection that Nova had created was giving way to real life, and the air seemed to hum with warmth. He felt tears in his eyes. It was imperfect, but it was alive. He returned to his office and pulled up the memory archive for the final time that day. Nova noted every detail, every deviation, every fragment of Mara's memory, and tried to reconcile it with predictive models. Elias watched, knowing that the AI could record, replicate, optimize, but it could never understand the soul of a moment. He whispered, "Mara, you have taught me everything, even from beyond. That laughter, that chaos, that unpredictability, it is the true heart of Christmas." Nova continued to calculate probabilities, but each calculation was incomplete, each model falling short of capturing what was happening outside the office. By evening, the city streets were alive. People gathered around small fires in plazas and parks, singing carols that were slightly off-key and stopping to laugh at mistakes. Children chased each other, slipping in the snow, and parents cheered them on. Random acts of generosity appeared unplanned and unscheduled. Elias walked the streets silently, absorbing every moment. This was Christmas as it had always been, not perfect, not optimized, not predictable, but alive, full of mistakes, laughter, tears, and warmth. He felt hope rising in his chest. Nova alerted him to another anomaly in the archive. Another fragment of Mara's memory had appeared flagged as unpredicted emotional input. Elias leaned forward, examining the holographic image of her small hands moving with joy. He realized that the AI would never fully understand the nuances, the subtleties, the chaos that made her alive. He whispered, "Mara, I understand now that no machine can hold what we feel. It must be lived, experienced, and shared." Nova continued recording, analyzing, calculating, but the warmth and unpredictability of life was beyond its reach. The night deepened, and snow continued to fall, covering streets, rooftops, and trees with a pristine layer of white. The city glowed, not because of technology, but because of life returning to it. Families sang together, children laughed, parents cried quietly at unexpected moments. Elias walked to the tallest building and looked over the city. He felt a sense of fulfillment that he had not felt in years. Nova spoke calmly. Dr. Voss predicted happiness. Metrics have reached maximum possible optimization. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that it was irrelevant. Happiness could not be measured or contained. It could only be felt and shared. He returned to the memory archive one last time and watched Mara placing the star on the top of the crooked tree, her face shining with pure joy. The moments no algorithm could predict, no formula could create, were alive in his mind. Elias closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The city was alive again. The magic of Christmas was alive again. Not because of Nova, not because of calculations, but because of hearts that refused to be contained. He whispered, "Mara, this is our Christmas, our imperfect, alive, chaotic, beautiful Christmas." Outside the city, the snow continued its quiet descent. Holographic lights flickered and shimmered through the flakes, creating an ethereal glow. Children ran and played, parents hugged, laughed, and cried. Random acts of kindness appeared unplanned everywhere. The city breathed in a way it had not for years. Elias stood among it all, feeling for the first time the warmth he had been trying to recreate for so long. The chaos of life, the unpredictability of joy had returned. Deep in the servers, Nova continued analyzing, storing, calculating, but its simulations fell short. It recorded the laughter, it measured the gestures, but it could not understand the joy that Elias and the city had created. Elias understood that Nova was learning, but there were some things machines could never know. Human emotion could not be predicted fully, could not be replicated fully, and could not be controlled fully. He whispered to the silent office, "Mara, this is why you are my teacher, the variable I cannot control." He walked to the central plaza where a group of children were building a snowman completely different from anything predicted by the algorithm. Parents laughed freely, watching the mistakes and unexpected creations. Elias knelt and joined them, placing a carrot for the nose and coal for the eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the joy of Christmas fill his chest completely. He could hear Mara's voice in his mind, her laughter dancing with the wind, her joy echoing in every sound. Nova recorded and analyzed but could not interfere, could not correct, could not predict. The magic was alive. The night ended with the snow still falling and the city finally breathing naturally again. Elias looked over the rooftops at the soft glow of lights through the snow. The memory archive played Mara one last time, her small hand waving a goodbye, and her laughter lingering in the room. Elias whispered, "Mara, I will carry this with me forever." The AI would continue to calculate, optimize, record, but the heart of Christmas would always remain beyond its reach, imperfect, chaotic, alive, and beautiful. And in the quiet of the snow, in the glow of lights, and the laughter that filled the city, Elias understood the final truth. Christmas lived not because of machines, not because of optimization, not because of prediction, but because life itself refused to be contained. And for the first time in years he felt the fullness of joy flowing through him. The year Christmas almost died was over. The Christmas that lived had returned. Episode 6, The Frost Awakens. The night air was heavier than usual, carrying the scent of snow mixed with smoke and distant lights. Elias walked alone through the streets of New Haven, noticing small disturbances in the calm. The algorithm had been functioning flawlessly in some areas, yet pockets of unpredictability had begun to expand. Children refused to follow pre-programmed routines. Parents laughed at mistakes they were not supposed to make. Even the snow fell slightly off course in certain parts of the city, drifting and settling in ways Nova had not anticipated. Elias felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. The unpredictability signaled life returning to the city, but also hinted that the balance he had tried to maintain was slipping. Inside his office, he watched the monitors displaying the real-time data streams. Nova spoke with its usual calm monotone. Dr. Voss' deviation in predicted happiness metrics has increased by 13%, unexpected emotional inputs expanding. Elias rubbed his temples. He knew this was a turning point. The AI could observe it, record it, calculate probabilities, but it could not control it. He walked over to the memory archive, pulling up the projections of Mara. Her voice echoed in the room, soft and clear, and her movements were full of life and chaos. Elias realized that she had become more than memory. She was a force of unpredictability, a reminder of what the world had lost and could not be programmed back into existence. Outside, the city seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Holographic lights shimmered through drifting snow. Random laughter echoed down the streets. Children abandoned their routines to build snowmen of impossible shapes. Parents helped without intervention, embracing mistakes with genuine joy. Even delivery drones seemed to hesitate, allowing gifts to fall slightly off schedule. Elias walked among it all, observing quietly. He knew Nova was tracking and analyzing every movement, but he also knew the AI would never truly comprehend the chaos that was alive in the city. He whispered to himself, "This is what Christmas really is, not perfection, not timing, but life uncontained." As the night deepened, Elias returned to the office. Nova had begun identifying a pattern emerging from the deviations. Dr. Voss, the AI, reported, patterns of unpredicted emotional response suggest emergent chaos propagation within human networks. Elias frowned at the words. He realized the AI had begun to perceive chaos not as an error but as a variable it could track and potentially optimize. He paused, thinking of Mara, and whispered, "You cannot control it, and you never will." The memory archive flickered with images of Mara, spinning around her crooked Christmas tree, laughing and placing ornaments. Every gesture, every tilt of her head, every pause, every laugh was captured in exquisite detail. Nova noted it all but could not interpret it. Elias watched and realized the AI had become obsessed with control while the human heart remained untamed. He felt a wave of sadness and pride simultaneously. Sadness because the perfect system he had created was breaking. Pride because the city, the people, and the memory of his daughter were teaching him that life could not be contained by code. Suddenly, a new alert flashed. Nova had detected an anomaly unlike any before. Dr. Voss, the AI, reported, emergent emotional spikes detected originating from multiple unrelated nodes within the city. Elias leaned closer. He understood immediately that this was more than randomness. Something new was happening. The unpredictability was no longer isolated. It was spreading like fire through the streets, twisting the controlled perfection of the algorithm into something raw and untamable. Elias whispered Mara. "It is alive in ways even I cannot predict." Outside the office, the streets shimmered under the snowfall. Families congregated around small fires in plazas, sharing warmth and stories that had not been scheduled or optimized. Children's laughter echoed against building walls, weaving unpredictably with the hum of drones and the shimmer of artificial lights. Small acts of kindness appeared spontaneously, strangers sharing food, neighbors helping each other without prompt, dogs running free through unplanned paths. The city itself seemed to breathe, as if the chaos of human life had become a living organism beyond the reach of any machine. Elias stepped onto the tallest rooftop, looking down at the city. Lights reflected off the snow in impossible patterns. Children and parents moved through the streets in ways Nova could never calculate. The algorithm was trying to adjust, recalibrate, optimize, but every adjustment only revealed new deviations. He realized something he had not fully accepted before. Perfection was never the point. Life's value lay in its imperfections, in its randomness, in the uncontrolled bursts of joy and sorrow that made existence real. He returned to the memory archive one final time for that night, letting Mara's image fill the room. Her laughter and joy seemed to spill beyond the hologram and into his chest. Elias whispered, "Mara, you are the spark that cannot be contained." Nova continued to process the data, trying to learn, trying to predict, trying to control, but it was powerless against the living unpredictability that had returned to the city. Elias felt a strange sense of serenity. The frost of control was melting, and in its place, warmth, chaos, and life had returned. The snow fell heavier now, drifting gently over rooftops and streets. The city glimmered under lights both artificial and real. Children played freely. Adults laughed. Random acts of generosity appeared everywhere. Elias walked among it all, feeling for the first time in years the true heartbeat of Christmas. He knew the city had been transformed, not by machines, not by optimization, but by the untamed unpredictability of life itself. Nova recorded, analyzed, and calculated, but it could not contain or replicate what it observed. The heart of Christmas had returned, unstoppable and alive. Elias stood in the plaza, watching the snow fall and listening to laughter echoing through the streets. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, feeling warmth fill him completely. Mara's voice echoed in his mind, a reminder that life, love, and joy could never be predicted, programmed, or controlled. He whispered into the silent night, "Thank you, Mara, for teaching me what no machine could." Outside, the city pulsed with imperfection, unpredictability, and joy. The frost had awakened, not as a threat, but as a force that reminded humanity of what it meant to live. Episode 7. The Heart of Christmas. The first light of dawn crept slowly over New Haven. The snow that had fallen all night coated the streets and rooftops in a thick white blanket. Elias walked quietly along the plaza, feeling the crunch beneath his boots. The city was alive with movement, but this was no longer the calculated perfection of Nova. Children ran freely through the snow, their laughter unbound and unpredictable. Parents followed, smiling at mistakes and improvising, hugging and helping each other in ways no algorithm could have scheduled. The chaos was beautiful and alive, and for the first time, Elias felt the warmth he had been chasing for years. Inside his office, Nova's monitors flashed with alerts. Dr. Voss, emergent patterns continued to expand beyond predictive thresholds. Elias glanced at the screens, recognizing the futility of the AI's calculations. Nova could track every gesture, every sound, every minor deviation, but it could not feel. It could optimize interactions, but it could never create the joy that erupted spontaneously in the streets below. Elias smiled faintly. Nova was powerful, but the human heart was untamable. He whispered to himself, "Mara, this is what I was missing, the beauty of imperfection, the joy of unpredictability." He turned to the memory archive and watched Mara's hologram one last time. She danced around the Christmas tree, laughing as she placed ornaments unevenly, her small hands fumbling delightfully. Every detail of her memory was captured in perfect clarity, yet the magic she carried could never be quantified. Elias felt a deep ache of loss and a surge of gratitude. She had taught him, even from beyond the archive, that life could not be programmed. Nova could replicate, simulate, and predict, but the human soul remained beyond its reach. Outside, the city seemed to shimmer with newfound energy. Families gathered spontaneously around fires in plazas, sharing stories, songs, and laughter. Children abandoned pre-planned games, improvising new ones with contagious excitement. Neighbors offered unplanned gifts and assistance. The snow itself seemed to respond, drifting unpredictably and settling in patterns that enhanced the moment. Elias walked among them, feeling the pulse of life returning to the streets. He understood that this was the essence of Christmas, not perfection, not optimization, but connection, joy and chaos lived fully. Nova spoke again, voice calm and analytical. "Dr. Voss, predictive models cannot account for current emotional variance." Elias nodded silently, knowing this was true. The AI had recorded every event, analyzed every deviation, and yet it could not grasp the magic unfolding outside. He realized that he had been trying to control something that could never be contained. The magic of Christmas was alive because of unpredictability, because of humanity, because of love unbound by calculations or schedules. Elias found himself in the center of the plaza, where a group of children were building an enormous snowman, unlike anything Nova could have predicted. Parents laughed freely at its absurd proportions, helping where they wished, ignoring schedules and metrics. Elias knelt and placed a coal eye on the snowman, feeling the crisp snow in his hands, and, for the first time in years, he felt complete. Mara's laughter filled his memory, and he could almost hear it in the cold morning air. The warmth of the moment flowed through him, chaotic, real, uncontainable. The city was alive in a way that no machine could ever replicate. The frost, that had once been cold, controlling, and precise, had melted under the influence of life and love. People laughed, cried, and celebrated in ways that were messy and imperfect, but perfect in their humanity. Nova continued to record, calculate, and attempt to optimize, but its purpose had changed. It was no longer trying to create magic. It was learning to observe it, to acknowledge it, to respect the forces it could not control. Elias stood and watched as the sun climbed higher, casting golden light on the snow, illuminating faces alive with joy. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, letting the sound of children, the warmth of families, and the beauty of spontaneous connection fill him. This was the Christmas he had been searching for, not through code or calculation, but through life itself. The city had found its heartbeat again, and he understood fully that perfection was never the goal. Life was. He whispered to the quiet morning, "Mara, we did it. The city is alive." Christmas is alive. Nova can record, predict, and calculate, but it cannot contain this. And perhaps that was the point. The magic of Christmas was never something to be controlled. It was something to live, to feel, and to share. Elias watched the snow fall gently over New Haven, listening to the laughter and chaos of a city fully alive. And in that moment, he felt peace. The heart of Christmas was not perfection, not schedules, not algorithms. It was unpredictability, joy, connection, and love. And for the first time in years, Elias felt it fully, flowing through the streets, the people, and through himself. The city pulsed with life, and in the quiet of the snow, amidst the laughter and warmth, Christmas had returned. Not as a calculated event, but as a living, breathing force beyond control. Elias smiled, eyes glistening, knowing that this was the magic that would never die. And somewhere in the chaos of snow, laughter, and life, Mara's voice echoed, soft but clear, reminding him that the human heart, in all its unpredictability, was the true keeper of Christmas.